my friends. It is now time for the Soulful Psalms segment of Beacon of Truth. The Soulful Psalms, we take one of the Psalms from the wisdom literature of the Old Testament that we recite and pray in every holy sacrifice of the Mass. And we connect that Psalm to your everyday lived experience. And today we're going to finish our look at Psalm 40. So Psalm 40 is in book 1 of the Psalms. The Psalms are broken into, there's 150 Psalms broken into 5 books. And the idea is to mirror the Pentateuch, you know, the law of Moses, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. You know, actually in Matthew's Gospel is broken into 5 parts or 5 sections. If you look at it exegetically, it's broken into 5 sections. You have the infancy narratives in the beginning, and then you have kind of 5 different parts of Matthew's Gospel, and then the ending. And the same thing is with the Psalms. So the Psalm is supposed to mirror the law of lax orandi, lex credendi. The law of prayer is the law of belief, you know. And so the Psalm is supposed to be a prayerful reminder of the law, God giving us His law through these prayerful hymns of praise. So all the Psalms in Book 1 are attributed to David. The superscript or prescript is the entire first verse of this Psalm. It says, Lemenzeach ha-David mizmor. Very simply, for the choir master of David, a psalm. So I love the way David started this psalm off. I waited for the Lord. He stooped down to me. He heard my cry. I love that. David either comes out stating clearly and directly what the problem is. Lord, people are assailing me. Lord, I'm in trouble right now. You know, or my heart is not proud nor haughty. It's just David just comes out and states what the issue is. And here, though, interesting. He goes, I waited for the Lord. He stooped down to me. So he starts off talking about how the Lord answered his prayer. You know, and look what he did. He waited for the Lord, right? He waited for the Lord. So there has to be, when we're making prayerful petition to the Lord or asking for intercession, there's a time of waiting. You know, we don't serve a fast food God. You know, when I came back from my walk today, I walked a little over 7 miles. I was hungry, and I ate a handful of roasted whole cashews, which were great, but I was still hungry. So I walked across the parking lot from the hotel to a little Mexican place there, and actually ran into Lynn Devitt, who's the executive director of Real Presence Radio. We actually had lunch with her and her daughter, and one of the marketing people there for Real Presence Radio. Had a great time. And so if I'm hungry, I can go get something to eat within minutes. But we don't serve a fast food God, right? God works in His timing. God's timing is always perfect. So what I love about the start of Psalm 40 here is David is reminding us that we have to wait for the Lord, that there's a spirit of patience that needs to happen when we're waiting for the Lord to act. Now, the Lord is faithful. If we are faithful, the Lord is always faithful to His covenant. We are the ones who break our covenant promise with the Lord. And that's why we have the sacrament of reconciliation. You know, but the God is always faithful to His promise. So, and what does Jesus say? You know, pray for whatever you ask for, the Lord will give you. Now, again, not a genie who grants every wish, but He will grant all those prayers that lead us into deeper communion, intimacy with Him, that will help us to become more of the person who God created us to be. Right? Those prayers that lead us, and sometimes those prayers will make it like a left turn, right? Because the Lord writes straight with crooked lines, right? So the prayer is not going to be answered in the way that we want, but it's going to be answered in a way that God will strengthen us in our resolve to follow Him with more passion and fidelity, and with a deeper sense of hope and longing. So beautiful what David says, I waited for the Lord and He stooped down to me. He heard my cry. No, this also is the cry of the people of Israel, longing and yearning for a Savior. You know, and the Catechism talks about divine condescension, how God came down to our level. He came down from heaven to earth. The Word became flesh and dwelt among us, the second person of the Trinity that existed from all eternity. became in flesh in the womb of the Blessed Virgin Mary to bring salvation to all of God's people, to all members of God's family, or at least to offer salvation. Not everybody, sadly, is going to accept it, but God died on that cross for every single human being made in his image and likeness. We just have to open our hearts and our minds and our wills to unite ours with his so that we can enjoy eternity with God forever. But he stooped down to us. He loves us enough to come down to our level. You know what I did say that this is akin to? It's like, I remember my kids were young when they were first like babies, still crawling or maybe just starting to walk, and you had to stoop down to them. Get down to their level to take care of them, right? To pick them up or to hug them or to whatever you need to, you have to stoop down to their level. And I love the way that God the Father stoops down to the level of us as children. You know, he comes down to our level to hug us, to lift us up when we fall, you know, to hold us, to support us. You know, and I love how David articulates that so beautifully here. In the first part of this psalm, and then he goes on, you know, with a parallelism here. He drew me from the deadly pit, from the miry clay. He set my feet upon a rock and set my footsteps firm. You know, with the Lord in our lives, you know, there may be times of trial. There may be times of tribulation. There may be times of pain and suffering, but the Lord will never leave us. The Lord is always there loving us and supporting us, rescuing us from that deadly pit, from that miry clay, setting our feet on safety, the rock of safety, so that the flood waters of the culture don't wash us away. So we don't get caught up and drawn out to sea. You know, in Oregon, a big thing there is riptides. You know, that's why you don't see a lot of people on the beach in Oregon, you know, because or a lot of people swimming or surfing out there, because you can get caught in a riptide and get pulled out to sea, and there's no way you can make it back to shore, you know. So, but God will save us, and that's what he did on the cross. He saved us from that deadly pit, from that miry clay. The wood of the cross, you know, absorbed all of that, took his blood into that cross, you know, and the blood made atonement by reason of the life. And we share in that life in every single Eucharist. You know, so when we pick up our cross and follow him, you know, we're picking up the cross and following Jesus to eternal life. So, you know, we're not trying to avoid the cross, you know, because everyone's going to have a cross, everyone. But we have to, when that cross is given to us, and that cross is laid on our shoulder, you know, we have to remember that the love and the dignity and the strength, and that we're not carrying it alone. Even Jesus needed help carrying his cross, Simon of Cyrene. And so the last verse of this psalm, look at the first verse, now look at the last verse, verse 18. Wretched and poor though I am, the Lord is mindful of me. So here's David. He's the king. He's the king of Israel. He's the one that reunited the kingdoms. So all the 12 tribes are under the rule of David now. But he calls himself wretched and poor, right? It's because he recognizes his humility before God. Even though he's the king, he recognizes that God is the king of his life. And before him, he's just a humble, wretched, and poor servant, right? Humility. Again, humility doesn't mean thinking less of yourself. It means thinking of yourself less. And I love that. And finally, the last verse, you are my rescuer, my help, my aid, my assistance. Oh my God, do not delay. Right? So I love that. So he starts off saying how he waited for the Lord, and he stooped down to me and heard my cry. And the last verse of this psalm says, oh my God, do not delay. So circling back. Right. So David, I waited for you and you came, Lord. And so now I said, don't delay. Right. But again, you know, we ask God to answer our prayers in you know, we'd like to answer them quickly. Right. We like to know now what's happening and why it's happening. But, you know, sometimes we have to, again, be patient and wait for the unfolding pattern of God's mercy working in our lives. God is often setting up things behind the scene, putting people in, like a chess. A good chess player looks 3-4 moves ahead, and that's what God is doing. He's setting up things 3-4 moves ahead in our lives, so that when the time of blessing comes, when he does come to answer that prayer, we're going to be in a position, and things are going to be in a certain place in our lives to be able to receive that blessing with gratitude. And again, it may not be the way in which we hoped or we expected that God would answer the prayer, but we have to trust that God will answer the prayers that lead us closer to deeper union and intimacy with Him.
For more on the Psalms with Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers, check out Beacon of Truth weekdays at 4 p.m. Eastern on EWTN Radio and streaming everywhere you listen to podcasts.